Hi class, this is Mr. Patterson with Bearded Debate. Today we're going to be talking about the second negative rebuttalist. And with the second negative rebuttalist, here is the main goal. First 3 minutes, you need to address every argument in the round. Go down the flow, off case, on case, weigh the round, and so on. Now, here's the deal. The last part of the speech needs to focus on weighing the round and making sure that you are making the point to a policymaker judge that, hey, this is why we're winning, why the status quo is better than the affirmative, and these bad, terrible disadvantages and things will happen. And then the last 30 seconds, which I'll talk about again, really needs to be the focus of these are the big 3 arguments in the round, and this can have a stock issues vibe to it, it can have a policymaker's vibe to it, doesn't matter. But the last 30 seconds, you really need to hedge your bet and make sure that the judge understands these are the 3 main issues. To get back to this, just like in all the other rebuttals, you need to go down the flow. Cover topicality, but here's the key to a good topicality argument on the negative side. You need to argue standards. You need to be able to say that, hey, look, our values or our value system is better than the other team's value system. And this is what you really want to hit, is standards. It's the easiest to argue. Voters, you can talk about how predictable limits are important, but it's really not something that if you really stress, you're going to win. Most cases are topical for the most part. But if you argue standards, that's where you're going to have a chance to win, and you don't have to spend a lot of time on it. But here's the thing. Don't just copy the T-shell and repeat yourself again. Judges hate it when they hear the same thing over and over again all around. They'll just shake your head, yes, go on, something like that. But the main thing is carry the shell over. Say, carry across my violation definition, voters, but here I'm going to talk about the standards. But the main thing with this, again, reply to their replies. If the affirmative team has a response that is good or worth addressing, or any reply at all, you need to address their reply, say what it was, and then say what your reply is on a topicality argument. Stress your standards, why you're winning the issue, and make sure that the judge understands why you're winning the topicality argument. Now, here's the cool thing about this. It's so important on topicality, on the negative side, to not just run the argument in the T-shell, like I said. How can you tie this to other arguments in the round? Are the harms not significant? Maybe you ran a substantial T argument. Maybe you say, look, obviously this isn't a substantial increase in any way, shape, or form. How is this really solving for the harms then? Is this going to solve for the harms? Maybe that plays into, how significant the harms are. If they can't prove that this is a major issue that's being fixed, then what's the point? How can you tie this into other arguments? And then how can you contrast their small harms versus how bad the disadvantage is that your team ran? Maybe you can tie that in right there and then use that as a transition to move into the disadvantage. So then you need to talk about how your disadvantages still stand in the round. Exaggerate how bad the impacts are and really sell that this is bad and that these bad things will happen. So you need to hit on your disadvantages going down the flow. Remember, always attack 2. Oh wait, no. Always extend. So if you have another impact that you can read that 1 NC maybe didn't read, extend the impacts, make them greater, and reply to each reply. They're probably going to attack your link or brink. Maybe they'll attack the impact by saying it's ridiculous, but for the most part, you need to reply to their arguments and explain why you're winning that argument. Now moving on to the harms, inherency, and solvency. The judge is looking for an extension of thought, not just repeating what your harms argument was or what your inherency argument was or what your solvency argument was. Make sure you're replying to the affirmative team again and saying why your argument is better or you're winning. You can tell a story of how this all connects together, or maybe paints a picture or a scenario where, if the problem isn't as bad as they're claiming and they're not even able to solve for the problem in the first place, they're not going to get their advantages and there's not going to be a great impact or significant benefit to society by passing their case. Plus, this great disadvantage is going to happen. So how can you tell this in a story in a way that's going to tie it all together and make sense to the judge, while also covering each of the arguments brought in the round and what the response is without just repeating? So you'll go down the flow again, whatever the speech order was brought into the round, typically harms, inherency, solvency, and answer each of those. Now, Here's where the part comes down to the last 2 minutes left. You've got to stop and weigh the round, like I said at the beginning. You got to talk about why your team is winning, how this disadvantage is so great in comparison to their advantages, and how did their advantages maybe turn into a disadvantage. Or you could talk about how you mitigated their advantages and now these disadvantages stand looming over this case and there's no benefit to society for implementing their policy. This is really, really important for you to do because this is where the policymakers buy your case. So you've got your stock issues saying, look, we're winning on these stock issues, and now you're moving into the impact calculus or talking about why your impact will hit before theirs, that the magnitude will be worse than theirs, and that it is actually more probable to happen your disadvantages than what their advantages are. So that's where you really tie all of that together and really make this argument that, hey, you are going to be winning this round because your disadvantages outweigh the advantages. And then in the last 30 seconds, if there's any way for you to, if there's not a timekeeper, make sure you're keeping time because you need to know these last 30 seconds, you need to boil it all down. You say, this is what it comes down to, Judge. These are the 3 main arguments in the round. Do not let them sidestep these issues. Do not let them talk around these issues. Make the negative or the affirmative team reply to these 3 arguments with new evidence because right now, Judge, we're winning this argument and they have not brought any new arguments in the round. They've just been repeating themselves or repeating their case, and we have these 3 main arguments, and if they lose one of these, it flows to us. It flows to us and the negative wins. And so your idea here is you're hedging your bet on these 3 main arguments that you think are the most impactful or the 3 that you think are winning. And you really stress those and make the affirmative team have to answer it in the last speech. And say, Judge, if they answer them and they're able to answer them well with new evidence, sure, we'll agree that they would win. But for the most part, if they don't, it's for us. It's our vote. With that, thank you for your time. Have a good day.